Welcome to Essential Leadership Skills, the broadcast. Today, we're excited to feature Jack Skeels, a visionary leader whose achievements speaks volumes. As a two-time Inc. 500 award winner and former RAND senior analyst, Jack has demonstrated unparalleled excellence in leadership and strategic thinking. As the CEO and founder of Agency Agile, Jack has revolutionized agency operations, championing agility and innovation. His insights as a frequent keynote speaker and published thought leader have made him a pivotal figure in the realm of leadership and organizational transformation. Residing in Corona del Mar, California, Jack's influence extends far beyond his locale, inspiring change and fostering growth across the industry. Today, we dive into Jack's journey, exploring the principles and strategies that define effective modern leadership. Stay tuned for an episode filled with inspiration and actionable insights.
This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Mr. Jack, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it so much.
Hey, thanks for having me here, Glenn. I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, actually I have too, especially when I went through, and we're going to talk about it, your book.
Oh,
that
yeah.
just threw me for some major loops. We're going to get into that a little bit.
Cool.
Always got to start off though asking about, actually I'm going to just throw that all away. Let me just ask you, what motivated you to write your book? What was your motivation behind that?
First of all, I think there were two pieces. One is I didn't think it would be so hard to do. And if I'd known how hard it was to write a book, I may not have ever started, but that's not a good reason to avoid it. And I think that the real thing that struck me about this is that people don't understand managing in general. In other words, what we've done over the years is we've found a way to manage that really isn't connected to today's realities. And so I really putting it out there, and that's the title as you are showing now here, Unmanaged, is the idea is to be provocative and get people to start thinking about how they manage. And maybe that changes behaviors and improves success rates and all that kind of thing.
You'd be surprised at how much so behind the scenes. We bulk record our podcast on Mondays, and you'd be surprised how much the last two before you dovetailed into a perfect you right now. It's just
cool.
perfect.
Oh, nice.
It's just unique. But I want to ask you though, in your development as yourself as a leader and leading others, when did you realize the importance of being able to focus on, I guess, it's time and efforts? That's what I took away. You got to focus on certain things in order to let them go to get better. But how did that come about for you? How did this realization impact your leadership style? I know I asked about 10 questions in one, but let's go with how did this focus and when did this focus take place for you? What happened in your career? Okay, wait a minute. We need to think about it this way.
I actually had a very interesting pivotal moment. I talk about it a little bit in the book right in the beginning, which was I was leading a large office of a global company. I'm leading a 105-person office, and I got laid off in the global economic downturn. And I was maybe the 40th of whatever. I don't know how many more they did after that, but in that sort of exit interview, I was told I was never that good of a manager anyway. And I think it was an interesting pivotal moment for me because I had to stop and say, am I sure that I am a really good manager? And in a sense, I was the leader of the office, right? So it implies both of those, right? In other words, what was I bringing to this situation and were they the right things? And the reality is that as I dug into it, and as you so kindly noted in the intro here, I have a research background. So I spent a lot of time digging into what the science says good managing, good leadership looks like. And there are a lot of good answers out there. And the bad answer, the sad answer was I hadn't been one of those good managers. And in fact, most people, very few are. There are people out there who are good, but it's not easy. It's not natural. It's not intuitive.
Yeah. Okay. And that's something I noticed though, because it feels like you're kind of, you got to step back. So you're forced to step back when they said, okay, lay off curve number 40, you're forced to step back. If you're going to coach somebody who's not really forced to step back, and what would be the benefits would you be able to give them to say, hey, step back for a moment and take a look?
I think there are a lot of things, especially if we're talking in the managerial class, because managers, for example, managers usually get to that position by being the best at what they do. And the
Mm,
challenge is that once you achieve that managerial role, usually you're the best in your department or something like the best in finance. I become the manager of finance.
yes.
The problem is what it took to get you to that spot, which was being great in your craft, is it's the exact opposite skill set of what you need to be a great manager. And
Okay.
so that's the
I was
what
hoping
we're
that's
re-
where you're going. Okay.
yeah, yeah. The what we're really saying when we say back off a bit is back off of the things that feel natural to you because they aren't natural for a manager, right? You used to compete with all your peers to try and that's how you won. You won a competition with your peers to become the new manager.
Right,
But
right.
you don't want to be competing with anyone anymore. So
Exactly,
the
exactly.
whole way you were wired is in fact the opposite.
So we're also talking about this idea of unmanaging and picking up the skills and this unmanaging to pick up the skills necessary to be a leader versus being a good in finance. That you may have the art and science down of being great at Excel or reading spreadsheets, but do you have the art and science down of being a good leader? Which always drives me to the question of delegation. How important is that?
The interesting thing is delegation is wickedly important. It's one of the four key skills we talk about in the book.
Yeah.
It's only by the idea of delegation and maybe really the idea that we as a manager are best measured by how well we lift up our people. And so it's a very tricky thing because the managers will also tend to delegate towards those they feel most worthy of being delegated to, which in
Yeah.
fact
Yeah.
is exclusionary, right? In other words, if you feel like someone can't step up and do the job, then it's probably they'll never learn how to step up and do the job. And so it's a very mixed bag. And one of the things I get into a lot is how do we get around these biases that we have? They're human
Mm.
biases, right? They're not
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
we're not trying to be evil, but how do we get around that? And how do I bring up all my people behind me, if you will? Remember, I climbed to the top of the hill. Now my job is to get everyone else to the top of the hill as well.
That's isn't that just the frame of thought right there? Now my job is to support and get everybody else to the top of the hill. So
Yeah.
leading
Yeah.
so would you say leading from just that alone? Well, okay. Let me play coach person needing coaching.
Sure.
I realize when I try to delegate and develop my staff, it seems like I'm spending more time in that than doing the job. Coach me out of
Yeah.
that frame of thought.
Okay. Do you remember when you sucked at doing that a long time ago? Okay. We
You're
all
driving the
were,
car,
we,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, we were all bad at things once upon a time, right?
Yeah.
And the only way we got good was partly through our own personal perseverance, but the other was by having someone who gave us room to actually learn and fail and get better at it. And in fact, for someone, and I think you're spot on, Glenn, for someone who's the person who just, you killed it, you're great, you've got the manager job now, everything that you watch people doing feels like it should be easy to do. Okay. You forget right
Really good
away.
point.
Yeah, you forget how hard it was for you. And in fact, the job of the manager, I have a huge problem, by the way. I didn't mention in the book with the idea of high potential people. I agree there are high potential people in your department, but that's not the hard part about being a manager. That's easy. It's easy to hand work to high potential people, right? Your job is to make them all high potential people. And that's by staying away from that idea that I should rely on the hypos, so-called hypos, and
Oh,
actually
yeah,
grow
yeah.
everyone else to be that sort of capability. And that takes patience. It's hard, exactly like you said.
It does take a bit of patience. And your book opened up something else to me that says it takes patience. And I may not be great at it, but I got to figure out how to do it. Because you have this belief, it feels like that just people are motivated and capable of making their own contributions if you give them the freedom to do so.
Yeah,
Now,
we've
they're
done.
required. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we've demonstrated it. Look, we've worked with over 200 organizations now, and we do it regular. It's just a regular magic trick that we do when we make managers step back a bit and make teams pick up the work and stumble and fail and grow and all that kind of thing. I tell a story in there where one one leadership group thought they had 60 people in their organization. They thought
Hmm.
30 of them needed to be exited at some point. They just aren't good enough, right? And we
Right.
did this with them, and a year later they were saying we have an awesome team. And it turns out only one person left, and that person left voluntarily. So the shift of how a leader thinks about a team versus having the team demonstrate their capabilities. It's amazing what happens with this.
Okay, now you started down that path, and I'd like for you to give us, without giving away your secret sauce, without you giving away your secret sauce, but giving away your secret sauce. Let's say you're invited into an organization to work. What's the first thing you're going to do to help those 5, 10, 20 managers that are in the room to understand it's their job to make the place a place where people feel safe, to motivate their team, let them feel capable? What's the first lesson you want them to learn?
I think what happens, yeah, the first lesson, we've gotten good at this and it's not easy. We're
Yeah.
very good at it in a range of businesses that we work with, is almost all of the challenges in these knowledge worker driven organizations
Yeah.
is that managers don't understand how awesome their people are. And they actually view almost every problem as being a problem with their people. And so what we do is we figure out how to have a discussion where we flip the dialogue, right? Where we literally just turn it the other way around and say, do you understand how hard it is to be one of those people? We put them in their seats. And one of the cool things we do, a thing called the productivity diagnostic, where we do this interactive workshop. It's really fun, where everyone talks about why it's so hard to get work done. And you know what? Almost all the reasons are because of the way managers behave and the decisions the managers make about the way the work happens. And when the managers see that, they go, oh, okay, maybe they're trying really hard, but they struggle because of things we're not doing right. And that's the hearts and mind shift that we have to do.
That's a really impressive piece right there. Just that piece of, let's flip it around and let's hear why people are not performing their job. And it does seem to come back to the manager, doesn't it? The manager or the leader is holding them down for somehow without it, maybe even being aware of it.
I think you're right. Look, I just want to go on record. I try to say this every time I speak anywhere, is that I think virtually every manager goes into work trying to do the best possible
Best they
job they
can.
can every day.
Yeah.
Okay. And God bless them. They do, and they try with all their heart. I think it's a lack of craft, not a lack of desire. And that's what we're trying to do with the book and what we teach and the work we do as well. How to become a manager that actually creates the kind of results that I'm hoping for.
Something in your book, and I'm trying to get it right in my mind here real quick. I think one of the key concepts I came up with out of your book was this idea of empowerment. Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, it's a little bit of an overloaded word, so it's a little bit tricky, right? And I think that the idea that we give people a chance to succeed is essentially at the core of it. The
Mm.
I'll tell you, first of all, everyone in your organization is ridiculously capable because they've been trained by 400,000 years of evolution to be.
Oh,
If you think about what our ancestors came through, and all of us have that same genetic or very similar genetic profiles of we're survivors, we're fighters, we're problem solvers, we're naturally curious, and naturally we all have fun at the idea that we can get something done and do it and take ownership of it. There's not really an empowerment problem inside of people. Okay. The
mm.
empowerment problem
Mhm,
looks like,
mhm.
how do we enable all those skills to come out? And that's the tricky part, right? Is it just the managerial mindset? A lot of times is one of, they're not capable, and because I can't see how they're capable, then I don't give them a chance to do it. And we demonstrate over and over, like I said, it's like a human pet trick or something like that. We
Yeah, yeah.
demonstrate over and over that when you let go of that idea, people step up.
When we're talking about empowerment, can you give me a little more coaching on this idea of like setting clear expectations or holding people accountable? How does that play into empowering somebody? If I'm setting your expectations for you or holding you accountable, does that play into empowerment as well?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting what managers do, and we talk about this in the book, is that the managers often they underestimate how little information people have in the work that they're doing. In other words, they think if I just tell them to do X, then they should do X. And when they goof it up, they're like, oh, I guess I need to micromanage that more. And the problem is not in the instruction. The problem is that in general, workers don't understand the context of why they're being asked to do this. And the
Hmm.
Japanese have a great technique. I go into it in a lot of detail. It's called BA, and it really means bringing everyone to the same place of understanding. And when we do this, it's amazing. The manager's explaining everything, and it's like a town hall sort of thing. The manager's explaining everything, and people start getting into it and start asking questions the manager doesn't even know the answers to. And all of a sudden, this is when a real sort of connection starts happening. And when you hand off work to someone who understands why it needs to be done, they get it done a lot better. They're more engaged, of course. You tell me to do something, I'm doing it for you, right? You explain to me something that needs to happen and tell me it's mine. Oh, that's a whole different ball game, right? I
Oh
will
yeah.
work really hard to get it done. So that's this idea. We somehow, and we have this failed notion of managing that I just need to tell people what to do. But in fact, what we need to really do is anchor them in why we're doing this.
So correct me if I'm wrong or word it the way you think, but you're saying, okay, when I have to delegate something to somebody, I should empower them to do the job. I should set clear expectations. I should let them know what they're responsible for, or what not they're responsible for, but that gives them the power to do the job because they own it. Is that how I'm reading empowerment, right or wrong?
I think it's a tricky word because people use it with accountability also. Okay. And accountability is a scary term because when you study things as much as we do, you'll see that most of what accountability means is managers pointing the finger at workers for not doing things that managers got in the way of doing by not giving them enough information, all that kind of things.
Yes.
So it's a very slippery slope. I like the idea of enabling people, if you think of it a little bit. So people are naturally powered. They're naturally empowered, right?
Better way.
The question is, am I enabling the release of that? And
Mm,
so when that's enabled, then I would call that an empowered organization, right? But the people are empowered already. So the question is, how do I enable that stuff to come out as a manager? And that's a set of behaviors that's really more, it's funny, by the way. We do this. I meant to put this in the book and didn't. We're really good at this with 4-year-olds. Okay. A 4-year-old will ask you a bunch of questions and you'll be like, yeah, and here's how the sun works and here, that kind of thing. And somehow we lose that skill. We lose that ability to actually give someone anchoring into what we're really trying to get done here.
Giving them the knowledge to get it done.
Yeah.
Okay. The other, I think, and I was looking down at my notes briefly, I think that there's three things in your book that stood out. Empowerment being one, but what about happiness? Can you talk to us about this idea of people being happy on the job? So I know oftentimes when you bring new supervisors together and you say, okay, should your team be happy?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes,
No,
yeah.
look, actually, people working hard, producing a lot of work can be very happy. In fact, the research has shown that the the problems come in when they're not set up correctly to succeed and then under pressure to succeed, and then all the behaviors that wrap around that between the managers and their people and the like. The cool research is called self-determination theory, and it's something every manager should know, and other authors talk about this as well. One of the most important things to realize is that if someone feels competent in what they're doing, and so if to feel competent is to be like, someone gave me responsibility for this, my boss gave me responsibility for this, and I actually understand it, I'm competent, I feel capable, and they're giving me the chance to do it and follow my own path. Autonomy is a very big thing, right? And this is the leaning back. Let people try and learn. In fact, the research shows giving people feedback when you told them what to do doesn't even work. Giving
Mm,
people feedback if they tried on their own works very well. So literally, like, even your feedback as a manager changes. And one of the other key factors is relatedness. Is, do they actually feel like they're part of the team? And again, back to that BA technique, that idea of let's make sure everyone understands what we're trying to accomplish and really has all their questions answered, brings everyone into the team in that way. And when that stuff happens, some other things happen. The research shows this. People get more productive. The quality of their work goes up. Okay. So they're producing more and it's better work. Okay. Should they be happy? It turns out they're very happy when they're doing that. Okay. That's the natural, that's, humans are built for that, to do great work that they love to do and they get excited about that. That's a normal human behavior. It's when we don't give them the precursors to that that they get unhappy.
Hmm. Okay. Because then it's like what we're saying is that if we give them purpose, that and that they understand what they're doing, they're going to be happy. If we give them the information to do the job, they'll be happy. As long as we give them.
Yeah, no, I love your word purpose there, Glenn. That's great. Is that if they're doing it blindly, and there's cool research on this as well. If in fact, the more blind they are to the destination of their work, who they're doing it for, and the like, all those factors I just named go down.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So purpose is absolutely essential. Yeah.
This is why this is such a great read. We'll put it back up in a little bit, but this is why this is such a great read, folks. I want to ask you, the last note that I have is this, your idea of cultural shift. I have to be able to cultivate these changes within my organization or even within my team of 5. I have to be able to cultivate these and get these people to, I said it wrong. I think that's probably get these people to, is I have to cultivate the change and I have to support my team to get there.
Yeah. So it's actually easier than it sounds, and it's harder than it sounds. I'll tell you why. The easy part is teams are easy. Your people are naturally inclined to go to the good work mode. Okay. The hard part is you, the manager,
Yes.
the leader.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have almost all your, I have a great client and very good friend of many years now. And he said, when I figured this out, what I decided to do was I would think about what I normally do, and then I would do the opposite. And he said, usually that was pretty close to being right. And so this whole idea that I need to change my behavior dramatically as a leader or manager. And if I do move out of the way, AKA unmanage in the correct way, people step up. People step up and they actually, the cultural shift becomes one of me shifting out of the way, because managers drive culture and they drive it through action usually. And in fact, driving it through inaction is actually even a better way to make great culture.
Go deeper in that. Drive it through my inaction.
Yeah,
As a leader.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Well,
So I'm gonna give you one last real quick
yeah,
example. I
please,
know we
please.
want to be conscious of the time. I can tell someone what we need to do. I explain the background and all that kind of thing, and I can tell them what to do, or I can ask them, "What do you think we should do in this situation?"
Okay.
The very act of asking, okay, transfers control. And it's an example of me leaning back. Look, I may know what they need to do, or I may know a version of what they need to do, but they're not going to learn anything if I tell them what to do. What I really want to do is make them think of the problem that I know an answer to and say, what do you guys think we need to do? And wait for them. Don't interrupt them. Just wait for them. Make them think about it. Make them use those brilliant 400,000 year trained brains to actually start solving problems.
I love that analogy, 400,000 plus years, because what you're saying is what we need to know, we already know, because we have 400,000 years of programming in our brains behind it.
Yeah.
I love this concept. How do we measure success? How does each organization measure success? Tough question. But
The funny thing is, the single best way we found to measure how healthy your organization is to ask your people, not your managers. We do some survey work as well, and the funny thing is, you ask managers how the organization's doing, they're way more optimistic than the workers, if you will. And if you ask them you name a problem and ask them how bad it is or how solvable it is, they'll actually say it's not as bad as you think, and it's very easy to solve. Now, the irony is that these problems exist in the organization, and if they're easy to solve, why are they not solved? But if you ask the workers, they give you a very accurate description of like how difficult the problem is, how hard it's going to be to solve. And they'll also answer you very accurately on how empowering, if you will, how much managers engage with them and lift them up and give them opportunity and the like. You ask a manager, how much opportunity do you give? They say, I'm probably about a 9 or so. You ask the workers, you get a way different score because they actually experience it.
tell me, what specific way or system do you use, or do you suggest in your book about feedback? How to gather that feedback information? I know you said go to the workers, but is there some kind of like the 360 format that you use, or some kind of format that you want to talk about?
We only do 270s, if you will, which
Okay.
is that getting top-down feedback it's pretty bad. There's great research on it, and so managers evaluating employees is a horrible thing. It doesn't work. Employees evaluate employees pretty well. Employees evaluate managers really well. And I tell a great story in the book where a very cool run organization had one form of managerial review every year, which was to survey all the people that manager had worked with and ask them thumbs up or thumbs down. Did this person help you get your job done? And the CEO, I said, wow, that's amazing. And I said, what happens if someone gets a thumbs down? And the CEO said, have a conversation with me. I said, what if they get a second thumbs down? And he says, nobody gets a second thumbs down. And to
Nobody.
me, that that was the ultimate measure there. That idea that if I'm not making all the productive people in my organization happy and productive, then I missed the mark as a manager. And
Uh,
see what I'm getting at is that
yep.
actually,
Yep.
because if we believe that they're naturally intrinsically want to get work done and everything like that, then the question is, did I
Yeah.
actually enable that? Yeah.
Yeah. Did you help them get there? So, what trends do you see coming in the future in leadership? There's been some big time changes, especially since the pandemic. But what changes do you see coming?
Wow, I don't know. Things are very much in flux. I think that the what I would hope for is that we get over our fascination with management. Okay. And I nothing against your podcast at all. I think that the challenge is that especially people think that there's so many things about being a leader that are so important. And at the end of the day, the best leaders I've known are actually humble, quiet people who know how to just give people what they need to succeed. And so I think in a way we're starting to lose, and I hope we regain. I don't know if we will. I hope we regain the sense of the servant leadership and servant managing. Is that really the gift we have is not us managers and us leaders. The gift we have is the people who get all this work done every day for us. And
Yes. Yeah.
I'd love to see that shift. I know it's happening some places. I don't know that it's happening as a global movement, though, unfortunately.
Not yet. Not yet. That's what you're here for. To help us get to that global movement. What are you doing right now? You got a great book out, but what are you doing right now to help leaders um, get the message?
I do things like this, and I'm speaking at a conference next week, so a lot of visibility around that. And that's one of the big things when we go work with a client. One of the first things we do is start educating the managerial group into how to actually get better results and how to shift the way you work and all that kind of thing. So it's a daily practice for us.
Tell me can you share what conference you're speaking at? I know but this is evergreen in a way, but what conference are you speaking at next week?
So I've had the opportunity to speak at several David Baker conferences. By the way, if you're a small business owner, he's a great author and the like. But David C. Baker, and this one is on managing projects and managing accounts inside of project-driven organizations. And I'm being joined by Jenny Plant, who's an expert on the account managing side and the like. And I think about 100 attendees or something like that.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Sounds like a good group to get behind. When I know I try, Jack. I really try to stay on time, but I very rarely get to it. But I'm much better. These things used to drift on for an hour sometimes, where I just ask more and more questions. But I just want to ask you one other question. I'm sure you're not prepared for it, unless you've listened to it. But here's the question: what question should I have asked you that I did not ask you? What question should I have asked you, but I did not ask you?
Well, first of all, that is an awesome question. Okay, I actually that's in the top 5 questions in the world, right? Top five
Hmm.
questions in the world. The I think that the best in terms of what sort of things your listeners are looking for, and I think that's the only I can't say. I don't know what that would be. So I'd put it back to you, which is what's the thing that your listeners care the most about that I might be able to comment on, which I assume you've done some of that already, at least, or maybe all of it.
Yeah, I try to do that, and I'm not going to let you off the hook, though. I let other people off the hook. I'm not going to let you off the hook because your breadth of experience and knowledge says, Glenn, you might have missed something that he feels like people should hear.
What's the one thing I can do as a manager? What's the one thing I can do as a manager or leader to take a first step in this direction?
That is an excellent question. And that would be the question I would want to ask them. If you're going to coach me, what's the one thing I can do to make that first step?
Start watching yourself. Start watching what you do and think about this very interesting sort of fact, if you will, that we understand now after having done this with 200 companies in the world. Almost everything you do as a manager is primarily proving that you're a manager. And the majority of what you're doing as a manager doesn't actually improve productivity. And so see if you can spot those moments in which you're just doing something as a manager to look like a manager. And it's not something that actually enables people to get their job done better and faster.
Wow. That one kind of hit home. So on that note, I better get to it. We want to thank you very much for your time again today, and want to make sure I want this to live for a long time. I think it will. There's a lot of great information, and I thank you for taking your time. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.
Glenn, thanks for having me. They're really wonderful, wonderful podcast and great interviewer as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this presentation from Touchstone Publishers. Please subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new episodes are published.